One thing for sure, when you hire me, you're getting a black actor. And if you wrote it and you didn't see a black actor when you wrote it, or even if you saw one, sometimes what you put in my mouth is not how I talk.
Samuel L. Jackson shook Hollywood to its core when he called out 7 actors he believed sold their souls for fame.
What was your drug of choice? Was it crack?
Yeah, that was my drug of choice. Alcohol was my drug of choice. The drug of choice was the drug that was in.
At 76, he's seen everything, from battling addiction and rehab to landing the breakout role that made him a legend. But unlike so many others, Jackson never bowed down to Hollywood's twisted rituals. On set, he refuses endless retakes. At award shows, he mocks the obsession with trophies. During press runs, he blasts fake diversity and empty gestures. Every move he makes screams defiance.
Samuel L. Jackson has a message for the Academy. He wants Oscar voters to know that he should already have an Academy Award under his...
And that's exactly why this list hits different. 7 actors accused of trading integrity for power, while Jackson stayed solid to the game.
Small power that he's holding on to.
Small power? I'm the power behind the throne. What are you talking about? I'm like the Spook Chaney of candy.
Born on December 21st, 1948 in Washington, D.C., Samuel Leroy Jackson was raised by his mother, Elizabeth, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Growing up in the South during turbulent times shaped his no-nonsense attitude. By the late 90s, Jackson wasn't just another face on the screen. He was standing toe-to-toe with Hollywood's biggest stars, demanding respect in an industry that often gave none to people who looked like him. But success didn't make him soft. It made him sharper. In one unforgettable interview, when asked why he turned down certain roles, Jackson snapped back, "I don't do scripts that insult me." That one line said it all. He wasn't about to let fame or money make him forget who he was. From the start, Jackson never hid his opinions about Hollywood's darker corners. He's been calling things out for decades, and his blunt honesty made people listen. Whispers soon spread that Jackson had hinted at a handful of black actors who, in his eyes, had sold their souls to make it big. Fans didn't dismiss it, because everything about Jackson's career and attitude made the claim believable. He never released a list, but his words and actions painted a clear picture, and fans have debated the 7 names ever since. The first 2 on that infamous list, Steve Harvey and Tyler Perry. And if you know Hollywood, you already know. That's where the story always begins. Someone always gets too close to power, and that's when the whispers begin. Steve Harvey found that out the hard way.
Rich people think differently. So what I'm gonna put in your head today is a rich people concept, so you can get to understand it. The only difference between successful people and not.
For years, he built his name as the everyday man's comedian, cracking jokes about faith, family, and the grind of life. His clean-cut image, his church boy charm, and those flashy suits made people see him as a man of values, not vanity. But then came the picture that changed everything. Steve Harvey, standing shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump.
Everybody okay?
Yes, sir,
Everybody
on
good?
repeal and replace.
Thank you. Thank you. Say hello to Harvey.
Mr.
Repeal and replace is going great.
Sir, Mr. Trump.
It wasn't just a handshake. It was a moment that shook his entire image. To his critics, that photo screamed betrayal. It wasn't just Steve meeting a president. It was Steve stepping over a line. Overnight, fans who once praised him as real started calling him a sellout. Memes flooded social media. Headlines mocked him, and people said he'd given up the last piece of his soul for a seat at the table. And here's the thing about fame: nobody waits for proof. In Hollywood, the appearance of compromise is all it takes to bury your credibility. Steve, once respected as the self-made success story from the hood to Hollywood, suddenly looked like another entertainer playing the system, cozying up to political power, chasing relevance instead of righteousness. Forums lit up, branding him part of the same machine as Diddy and other industry insiders. Whether it was fair or not, the damage was done. To many, Steve Harvey stopped being for the people and started representing everything fans were tired of: money, status, and silence. Now, if Steve's story felt like a sellout saga, Tyler Perry's rise looked more like divine destiny, at least on the surface. Perry himself has said more than once, "I'd rather sit broke in a corner with the Lord than take millions and sell my soul." A powerful statement, no doubt. But the more he repeated it, the more people started asking why it needed to be said so often. Perry's grind was legendary. He went from sleeping in his car to running a billion-dollar empire. He owns the biggest film studio in the US, even larger than Disney or Warner Brothers. And that kind of success made him untouchable. But critics say nobody reaches that level without compromise. The questions weren't about his talent or his ambition. They were about the cost. What kind of backroom deals, alliances, or sacrifices did it take to reach the top? People point to his partnerships with big networks, his ties with Hollywood power players, and the way his Madea films were instantly embraced despite feeding into stereotypes that the same industry had used for years. To some, that didn't look like victory. It looked like validation of the very system he once said he'd never play into. So now the question lingers. Was Perry's success truly faith-driven, or did he trade small pieces of his authenticity to keep the machine happy? The internet hasn't stopped debating it, and that's where Samuel L. Jackson stands out. He's not pretending to be perfect, he's just real, loud, raw, and unapologetic. While Harvey was bashed for rubbing elbows with power and Perry defended himself with holy talk, Jackson threw the whole game out the window. No chasing statues, no worshiping awards, just pure rebellion and truth on his own terms. Samuel L. Jackson never bowed to the weird Hollywood rituals that so many actors treat like sacred law. To him, chasing awards or taking roles just for Oscar buzz isn't success. It's soul selling, the kind that slowly eats away at who you really are until there's nothing left but a shiny, fake version of yourself. Jackson's entire career was forged in chaos, not comfort. Before the fame, he went to war with himself, battling a brutal drug addiction that almost ended his life. He's even admitted that in some of his earliest roles, he was acting while tripping on acid. That's not the story of a man shaped by Hollywood polish. That's the story of a man who crawled out of his own darkness and said, "Never again." He stumbled, he survived, and when he stood up, he made a promise to never trade control of his soul for anyone's approval. That survival became his armor. While Steve Harvey's image crumbled from one handshake and Tyler Perry kept defending his faith and integrity with words, Jackson let his actions do the talking. His career became a masterclass in boundaries. He demands golf in his contracts twice a week, refuses unnecessary retakes, and insists on full creative control over how he's shown on screen. Hollywood calls it arrogance. Jackson calls it freedom. He's never been impressed by the idea that a little gold statue defines greatness. When asked about awards, Jackson shrugged and said it's not about being in the club. Winning is what matters. That simple truth rattled Hollywood because he exposed the whole charade, the endless ceremonies, the fake smiles, the desperate need for validation. He made it clear he'd rather be real than be celebrated. And when you line them up side by side, the contrast is wild. Steve Harvey reached for power and got branded a sellout. Tyler Perry built an empire so massive that people still wonder what he gave up along the way. But Samuel L. Jackson, he kicked down Hollywood's doors, refused to bow, and made the system bend around him. He mocked the rituals everyone else followed and still became one of the most successful actors alive. He's not perfect, not even close. His past struggles are out there for everyone to see, but that's what makes him different. In a world where fame often demands silence and compromise, Jackson showed that you don't have to give up your soul. You can fight for it, even if the fight makes you unpopular. Now, moving down Jackson's rumored list, the next names take things in a different direction. Three men who couldn't seem more different, yet are tied together by the same whispers in Hollywood's back rooms. Chris Rock, Ludacris, and Cuba Gooding Jr. Let's start with Chris Rock.
I used to take him to Disney a lot. I used to take him to Disney all the time, right? But I ain't take him like normal people, no. That's right, we went on the Illuminati.
The man who built a career out of raw truth. When Chris first hit the stage, he wasn't just funny, he was dangerous. His comedy wasn't polished or polite, it was sharp, fearless, and brutally honest. He tackled race, politics, relationships, and power without flinching. He said what everyone else was afraid to say, and that's what made people love him. In the 1990s, Chris wasn't just another comedian. He was a revolution on stage. He stood shoulder to shoulder with legends like Richard Pryor and George Carlin, pushing boundaries with every word. He was unpredictable, unfiltered, and untouchable. But like everyone who dares to challenge the system, Hollywood had its way of testing him. And what came next would change everything. Somewhere along the road, something changed. By the 2000s, fans started noticing a strange shift in Chris Rock's vibe. The man who once tore into race, politics, and hypocrisy with razor-sharp jokes suddenly felt softer. The same comedian who spit fire on stage was now voicing a zebra in Madagascar, writing the wholesome sitcom Everybody Hates Chris, and taking roles that felt safe. Now, don't get it twisted. He was still funny, still brilliant, still Chris Rock, but there was something different in the air. The bite that made him dangerous had turned into a smirk the industry could market. Critics began whispering that maybe, just maybe, Rock had traded that rebel energy for a Hollywood-approved polish.
I meant to cut the snake, but I meant to cut the head of the snake. So my special will no longer be in Philly. It'll be in New York at the Barclays, where I cut off the head of Chris.
Think about it. His rise in mainstream fame lined up perfectly with this new family-friendly version of himself. He wasn't just the comedian of the streets anymore. He was a brand. His face on giant posters, his voice in kid movies, his jokes tailor-made for primetime TV. It was like the once fearless rebel had been domesticated by the same system he used to mock. Then came 2022, the night of the Oscars slap. That single moment threw everything into chaos. 1 minute he's joking live on stage. The next, Will Smith walks up and shocks the world. Suddenly, the internet exploded. Some said Chris handled it like a pro, staying calm, staying cool. But others said he looked like a man chained by Hollywood politics, someone who wanted to fight back but couldn't. They claimed he'd become too polished, too controlled, too careful to break the script the way the old Chris Rock would have done. And that's when the debate reignited. Was this still the same fearless Chris Rock who once called out power to its face? Or was this the industry version, cleaned up and compliant for the cameras? Now let's talk about another man whose transformation caught fans off guard. Ludacris, born Christopher Bridges. This dude was never meant to play it safe. When he hit the rap scene in the early 2000s, he came in hot, loud, wild, hilarious, and completely unpredictable. His videos were over the top, giant visuals, crazy energy, pure fun. He was the Dirty South. Raw, gritty, and authentic to the core. But just like Chris Rock, something shifted. 1 minute he's rapping about Southern hospitality, the next he's suited up as Tej Parker in Fast and Furious, cracking jokes about engines and computers. The transformation wasn't gradual, it was a jump. Fans were like, wait a second, what happened to the guy who brought chaos to hip-hop? How did we go from outrageous bars to family-friendly blockbusters? And then came the million-dollar question. Did Ludacris sell his soul for Hollywood stability? According to Cat Williams, that might not be far from the truth, because let's be real, the rap game is cutthroat. Artists rise fast and fall faster, but in Fast and Furious, Luda found something rappers rarely get. Longevity, a steady paycheck every few years, global fame, and a seat at one of the most successful movie tables in history. To some, it was pure genius, a business move that guaranteed success long after the mic cooled off. But to others, it felt like betrayal. The same Ludacris who once shouted rebellion was now part of the Hollywood system he used to clown. His music faded into the background while his acting persona took the spotlight. And if you look closer, the change runs even deeper. His lyrics lost that raw, wild energy. Those outrageous, unfiltered videos disappeared. The raunchy bars that made him stand out got replaced by a cleaner, smoother sound, something built for radio, not rebellion. The man who once represented the chaos of the South had turned into a Hollywood fixture, polished, predictable, and profitable. The fans who grew up on his fire wondered if the price of stability was his edge. And that question still lingers, louder than ever. Polished interviews, perfect appearances, and a brand image worlds away from the wild energy of early Atlanta rap. That's the Ludacris people see now. But here's the real twist. Both Chris Rock and Ludacris share the same Hollywood story. They were once raw, fearless, and unapologetically authentic. But somewhere along the line, that fire got repackaged into something safe enough to sell worldwide. Fans started asking the hard question, was this just maturity or a quiet compromise? A silent handshake with Hollywood that whispered, tone it down and we'll give you the world. The irony hits hard. Chris Rock, the comedian who once called out sellouts and clowned people for chasing approval, now finds himself accused of doing the same. And Ludacris, the rapper who built an empire on being authentic and unfiltered, now faces fans who say he left rap behind for red carpets and movie checks. Call it growth, survival, or straight up selling your soul. Either way, the transformation is undeniable, and it sets the stage perfectly for the next man on Samuel L. Jackson's alleged list, Cuba Gooding Jr. We all remember the moment that made him a star, the shouting, "Show me the money," in Jerry Maguire.
Didn't you tell my wife more personal attention? Did you not tell my wife more personal attention?
I said more personal attention.
That single line launched him into Hollywood's elite, and for a while, it looked like he was unstoppable. But then things took a strange turn. The same actor who won an Oscar started popping up in movies like Snow Dogs and Boat Trip, light comedies that left fans scratching their heads. In a 2003 interview, Jackson mocked actors who take what he called clown roles, just to stay visible. He didn't name names, but fans immediately thought of Cuba. It wasn't confirmed, but the message was loud enough that maybe Cuba traded the dignity of his Oscar for the safety of staying relevant. Because here's the cold truth. In Hollywood, talent isn't always the currency that matters most. The real currency is compliance. The scariest deals are the ones actors don't even realize they've made until it's too late. By the time the checks clear and the fame fades, the cost hits. Your authenticity, your freedom, your edge. And that brings us to the final two names on this list. The ones that made fans do a double take. Two of the most powerful, respected figures in the industry, Will Smith and Oprah Winfrey. On paper, their stories are pure inspiration. One is the Philly-born rapper turned actor who conquered every corner of entertainment. And the other is the queen of media, a woman who built her empire from nothing. But underneath those success stories, the whispers have never stopped. The question that keeps resurfacing, did they rise purely on talent and drive, or was there something else at play? Let's start with Will Smith, a story so perfect it almost sounds scripted. A kid from West Philly who rapped his way to fame with DJ Jazzy Jeff, then lit up TV screens as the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. From there, he made the ultimate leap, dominating Hollywood like no one before him. By the mid-90s, his career exploded. Independence Day in 1996, Men in Black in 1997, Enemy of the State in 1998, 3 straight years of blockbuster domination. And by the early 2000s, Will Smith wasn't just a star, he was the star. But that smooth rise made some fans uneasy. It was too clean, too perfect. People online started throwing around that eerie phrase, "Oh, sold my soul" vibes, didn't? They weren't saying it literally. They meant that something about Will's rise felt manufactured, as if the Hollywood machine had chosen him to be its golden boy. And it's not just about movies. Even his music career raised eyebrows. Will won the very first Grammy for rap back in 1989, when hip-hop was still being locked out of mainstream award shows. While other rappers were getting banned for their lyrics, Will kept his clean. No profanity, no controversy, no street edge, just smiles, punchlines, and radio-friendly bars. It made him the perfect crossover star, but also made some question whether he traded hip-hop's rawness for Hollywood's comfort. So fans started asking, was that the deal? Not with the devil, but with corporate America's idea of what a safe black entertainer should look like? A man who never scared the mainstream, never pushed too far, never ruffled the wrong feathers. Then as the years rolled on, cracks started showing in that perfect image. The controversies, the interviews, the family rumors, everything that once seemed polished started to look staged. And suddenly the whispers from the past didn't sound so crazy anymore. Because in Hollywood, image is everything. And once that image starts to slip, people begin to see what's really underneath. Will Smith's rise might have looked like destiny, but to many, it also looked like the price of perfection. The kind of success that doesn't come without hidden strings attached. And just when the world thought his legacy was untouchable, the spotlight started shifting again toward the queen herself, Oprah Winfrey. But her story and the questions surrounding it take things to a whole new level. The Oscars slap in 2022, the night Will Smith's perfect image shattered before millions. One second he was the calm, charming leading man the world adored, and the next, He was storming the stage, striking Chris Rock and leaving Hollywood in stunned silence. That one moment didn't just trend, it exploded. And comedian Cat Williams added fuel to the fire, claiming this wasn't just a man losing control. This was the industry doing its thing.
Will Smith, Chris Rock, you watch that, what do you think? How do you digest it?
I am in the production business. I understand what is worth doing for rating.
Online, people went wild. Forums, podcasts, Reddit threads, everyone had a theory. Some said the slap was the final proof that no one climbs that high without giving something up. Others saw something deeper, and not a sellout, but a man crushed by the weight of an image he could never escape. Hollywood built Will up as the perfect man, the perfect husband, the flawless star, until the pressure finally cracked him open for the world to see. But here's the key. When people talk about Will Smith and selling your soul, they're not talking about dark rituals or secret pacts. What they really mean is the emotional price of survival in an industry that demands perfection. How much of yourself are you willing to sacrifice just to stay on top of the world's biggest stage? Because make no mistake, that stage takes pieces of you every time you step on it.
A lot of people have asked me, what's Oprah really like? And what's this agenda that I sense with her? And yeah, there's an agenda, but you can't really know the truth, Oprah, unless you're...
And if Will Smith represents the Hollywood superstar molded into the world's favorite leading man, then Oprah Winfrey represents something even bigger, power itself. From a dirt-poor childhood in Mississippi to becoming the richest black woman in the world, Oprah's rise is the stuff of legend. She broke through every barrier that was supposed to stop her, from local TV anchor to queen of daytime talk. She didn't just sit at Hollywood's table, she built her own. Her show turned regular people into icons and unknown books into global bestsellers overnight. But with that level of power came endless suspicion. Because in Hollywood, the higher you climb, the louder the whispers get. On Reddit, YouTube, and every conspiracy forum imaginable, Oprah's name gets tossed around in the same breath as the most powerful people alive. Billionaires, politicians, Hollywood elites. And the question that always comes up is the same. How did she do it? Not how did she succeed, but what did she sacrifice to get there? Because Oprah's rise in the 80s and 90s wasn't just rare, it was unheard of.
Everyone was talking about Oprah because when you went on her show, it changed your life. But we didn't know at the time that it would change our life in a very dark and demonic way.
At a time when black women were being pushed out of major media roles, she became the most influential talk show host on the planet, and her influence went far beyond entertainment. It touched hearts, shaped opinions, and even shifted culture. She could turn a simple recommendation into $1 million movement. But that kind of influence doesn't come without rumors. Some say no one reaches that level of untouchable power without making serious trade-offs behind the scenes. People point to her deep ties with some of the most powerful names in business and politics, saying she didn't just move through those circles, she belonged to them. To her skeptics, that looked less like partnership and more like allegiance. And as her career evolved, so did her image. Oprah went from relatable talk show host to a kind of spiritual leader, someone whose words carried near religious weight. For millions, she was a symbol of hope, strength, and self-belief. But to critics, it was something more unsettling, a transformation that looked too perfect, too otherworldly. Then came her deep dive into spirituality and the metaphysical. Books like The Secret, discussions about energy, manifestation, and the universe's power. All of it blurred the line between inspiration and something deeper. For fans, she was teaching empowerment. For skeptics, it looked like she was tapping into something that gave her control. Because when Oprah spoke, the world stopped to listen, and that kind of power scared people. Her reach stretched beyond TV and entertainment. It dipped into politics, global philanthropy, and influence on a scale few humans have ever touched. From endorsing presidents to launching schools in Africa, Oprah wasn't just a talk show host anymore. She had become a global force, one whose voice could shift entire movements with a single sentence. To her supporters, she's a beacon of possibility. But to her critics, she's the clearest example of Hollywood's ultimate exchange, where ambition and influence blur into something that feels untouchable. And as those whispers keep growing louder, one question remains. Did Oprah master the system, or did she become the system? She wasn't just a talk show host. Oprah Winfrey was a force, the kind of power that could sway public opinion, shift culture, and even influence politics with just a few words. But for those who look closer, her rise looked like more than just success. It looked like the work of hidden alliances, quiet deals, and a network of power that most people could never imagine. And here's the part that keeps fans talking. No matter what controversy touches her name, Oprah always comes out untouched. Scandals that would destroy another celebrity slide off her like rain on glass. That kind of invincibility doesn't just happen, it builds. And that's exactly why people whisper. Did Oprah construct a fortress so strong that nothing could ever reach her? Or did she, as some online voices speculate, trade something essential, something deeply personal, to secure power that almost feels beyond human reach? Because make no mistake, both Will Smith and Oprah Winfrey represent something bigger than celebrity. One is Hollywood's golden boy, the charming face of blockbuster perfection. The other, a media titan whose influence shaped generations. Yet, beneath all that glamour and success, their stories overlap in haunting ways. Both climbed to unimaginable heights, levels of fame that defy logic. Both kept spotless public images that, after a while, looked too flawless to be real, and both in different ways became symbols of what happens when success gets so massive that people start wondering what was sacrificed to achieve it. When people say these stars sold their souls, they're not talking about demons or dark rituals. They're talking about something more subtle, more human, and far scarier. They're talking about the erosion of authenticity, the quiet compromises, the silent agreements, the emotional and moral prices that come with surviving in an industry that demands control above all else. Whether those deals were spiritual, political, or simply personal, one truth stands firm: the higher the fame, the heavier the cost. And for these names, from Steve Harvey to Tyler Perry, from Chris Rock to Ludacris, from Cuba Gooding Jr. to Will Smith and Oprah Winfrey, that cost will always live in the tension between admiration and suspicion. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think? Did they pay the ultimate price for power, or did they simply master the game? Either way, see you on the next one.